Hello there, and welcome back. Well, yesterday I started my episodes about discussion, and today I'm going to present you with an ethical discussion that I had often with my students and give you some ideas about how a teacher can guide a discussion and prepare for a discussion that's going to be very fruitful and going to be very interesting. So, when I was teaching, I taught the book Hiding Place. It's the story of a family, the Ten Booms in Holland, prior to and during the Nazi occupation of Holland. And it is a remarkable book to teach. In the course of reading it, the students discovered that this family, a Christian family, a Protestant family, took in Jews in Holland and became part of the system that tried to smuggle them out of Nazi-occupied territories and save them from the Nazis. And of course, they were eventually caught, and Corrie and her sister Betsy are taken to Ravensbrück, a concentration camp for women inside Germany. The book is astonishing. There's so much value in it and interest in it that the discussions from it almost always yield amazing things. But today I want to talk about the discussions that were probably the most interesting, the most productive that I presented. And it had to do with this moment in the story that set up the discussion. In the story, the Nazis, when they occupy Holland, require that all the Dutch people turn in their radios, because the Nazis wanted to control the information that entered their occupied country. So it turned out that the Ten Booms had two radios, one big family radio and a small radio. And they had decided that they were going to turn in the family radio but keep the little one. So Corrie was assigned the job of turning in the big radio. She turns in the big radio, and the Nazis, when she turned it in, ask her, "Now, is that the only one you have?" And she says yes. And when she leaves, after she tells this lie to the Nazis, she's astonished and horrified at how easy it is for her to tell this lie. And you talk about a jumping off point for a discussion. That is the ultimate one right there, because that's at the moment at which I say to the students, well, I think you can tell that as far as Corrie's concerned, and I tend to agree with her, there is no such thing as a good lie. Now, that really, especially to a teenage audience, that really makes the juices start flowing, because students definitely have thoughts about lying that are just forming when they're that age. They know they've been given permission for certain types of lies. They know how they feel about being lied to themselves. They have mixed feelings about both. And so it's almost irresistible, that proposal of a discussion for them to engage with. So, of course, the first thing they're going to bring up, interestingly, because they don't go right to the book, they come right to their own lives. They don't go to the book. They come right to their own lives. The first thing they approach is, quote, the little white lie. And culturally, most of us here in the States know what the little white lie is. And we know that young people have been given permission to tell them. So a woman saying, does this outfit make me look fat? Well, no, the outfit doesn't make you look fat. The fat makes you look fat. But I know, kids are like, whoa. That first one, the kids all are kind of suspicious of that one. They've all engaged in it. They've had permission to engage in it. But then we start talking about the difference between honesty and brutality. You can be honest without being brutal. And we talk about whether or not a question is fair game. Does this make me look fat? Well, if you want an honest answer, you shouldn't ask a question for which you won't be able to take the honest answer. So some of the responsibility for the response has to lie on the person who asked the question, right? But more importantly, is there a way to be honest without being cruel or brutal? And that proposes all sorts of opportunities for students to discuss things, and obviously they're going to bring their own life experiences to bear on this. They haven't been in a situation where they've had to turn in a radio, but they've definitely been in a situation where they've had to figure out, can I be honest about this? Where were you last night? Have they told sins of omission? Have they told lies of omission? That one really gets them going to talk about lies of omission, because the minute they confront that idea of the lie of omission, they begin to realize, oh, okay, I know how I felt about it, I know how it made me feel, and I think I know how I would feel if somebody did the same thing to me. So that wrestling begins, and eventually, and sometimes very quickly, sometimes a little longer, they'll get around to a more complicated, more interesting complexity, and that's the protective lie, which is what Corey told, the protective lie. And they start proposing scenarios in which telling a lie would protect someone. And this proposes much more interesting and complicated situations, because then we begin to start to really talk about what we value and the lines along which our sense of the real and the important and the just form. And that is compelling. That is interesting. And some classes even get to the point of talking about spycraft, about lying for the sake of the state, giving your life over to a lived lie in order to promote the well-being, the power of a government. Now, wow, does this present students with interesting questions. They wrestle rather intensely with this because they know that they've never even considered some of these things, and their experience is so limited they can't even pretend to fully grasp all the implications of having spycraft, of having people spying on each other and lying about it, of having people misleading the public. Should the government be allowed to mislead the public? Are they allowed to withhold information from the public? Is there a difference between withholding information and misleading? If so, what's the difference? So we see that in a discussion like this, that it's never ever going to be just one side or the other. There's going to be opportunities for students to deal with subtleties and complications and sort of unsolvable problems. And that yields the best stuff. When a problem is not easily solvable, when it requires students to really try to form an ethical guide for themselves and thereby judge what would be ethical for someone else, and perhaps begin to see that the shadings of that are definitely an individual's right, those are all powerful and effective discussion tools. And it makes the class infinitely interesting, because believe me, that lie discussion, the kids, a lot of them bring it up at home. They discuss it at home, they discuss it with their friends, it comes up. And when you can have a class actually figure in the way young people or students, adult students, live their lives and examine their lives, then you're really doing something significant and powerful. So what do you think? Is there a good lie? Do you have one in mind? Or like me, do you think, nope, there isn't one. There's not a good lie. They're all of them bad. How bad is another question and worth discussing. That's it for today. I hope you have a glorious rest of the day, and I hope you see me again, you gorgeous people.